I love using summer as an excuse to sew a completely new wardrobe using completely new fabrics, and it's summer already, so it's time for me to do that again. If you've been watching our latest videos, you've seen that I've made quite a lot already, so I've got a huge head start for my summer wardrobe, which by the way, you should definitely check them out if you're looking for ideas for yourself, for maybe your brand, or maybe a gift for someone else, because I'm sure you'll find your next pattern inspo over there. Today we're making a linen dress. Once in a while, I check all of my saved videos and inspiration I get from social media or Pinterest, and there's this particular dress that I really loved, and I found that there's a perfect pattern for it in Iclo, so I'm going to be making it with my own twist. I'm usually not a person who loves too much color. I feel more myself with darker or more neutral toned colors. That's why I chose this fabric for it. It's a linen striped fabric. I think it looks so elegant, and it really does match my inspiration, just in a different color. It's not 100% linen, which I love because it doesn't crease as much as a 100% linen fabric would, which, as you might know, it's kind of annoying because you have to be ironing it all the time. I find it really hard sometimes because summer usually means a lot of color, bright tones, and I'm not that person. So I really try to incorporate my style into what I sew for summer. And that's what's fun about sewing. You can take whatever pattern you like and just transform it into something you would actually wear. So I'm going to be showing you how to make the pattern for this dress for you to make in your own size, or maybe for someone else's size, or if you have your own brand, you could also create different sizes for this pattern. And you don't have to make it exactly as I do. You can modify and make some tweaks and changes if you'd like. So let's get started. We're going to start on iclo.com, which is where all the magic happens. And I always go straight to design tools, which leads me to all the amazing patterns you can find. And the first one is actually the one we're going to be using, this blouse with variable neck. And I'll show you how to turn it into a dress. Here you can modify everything as you'd like. It doesn't have to be the same as me. For example, I'm leaving a shorter sleeve and this notch neck, which I really like the look of. And I'm going for the longer length of the blouse so I can make it into a dress. I almost forgot, you have to choose your own avatar, the one that has your own size, or create one if you don't have one already, but you can create multiple avatars for different people. Here on advanced settings, you could also modify a lot of things and many variables for the dress, but I always think that less is more. So the only thing I'm really modifying here is a little bit of the length. I want it to be a little bit longer just in case. And also the width of the bottom, I wanted to open up a little bit more, which is what I did here. And this is how my avatar is looking. Here you can see how tight it's going to fit, the strain map, and a little bit of how the pattern is looking. Something really fun is that you can play with the fabric, color, and even print. Here I found the closest one to my inspiration, so I just went with that. Don't forget to save your project. I'm saving it as striped cotton dress. And as you know, I absolutely love this feature. In the textile calculator, you can see how much fabric you'll need for your specific design, which is incredibly useful. And now I can just go ahead and download it. I always use US letter formats, and I've been reducing the gap between patterns for 0.5 centimeters. And once you download your pattern, this is what you'll be left with. I'm going to show you what each of these pages mean later on. In today's video, I'm also going to show you how you would generally assemble an Iclo pattern. Here I've printed it out already, and you'll always get this first page, which has a test square. And as you can see, it says 10 by 10 centimeters, which means you have to measure it 10 by 10. And if it measures more or less, it means that your printer doesn't have the correct settings. That's why it's really important to just print this first page at first. So don't print the rest of the pattern, just print this one. Here you have more specific instructions on how to print it, but just make sure it measures 10 by 10 centimeters. And once you're sure about that, you can print the rest of the pattern. So your Iclo patterns will always have this page, which is a layout, and it varies depending on the garment you're going to be making and the size, because that obviously changes how many papers you need to print. In my case, for this dress, I printed out 20 papers, including this two at first. But I think there's only 18 pages that I actually have to assemble, and I'm going to use this layout to assemble it completely. There's different ways of cutting your pattern to assemble it, but lately my favorite one, because it's the quickest, is just trimming off all four corners on all papers. So I'm going to show you more close up on how I do it, and you have to do that for every page. Okay, so your pattern pages will look something like this. These lines are just the pattern, which, as I said, vary depending on what you're printing. But you always have this outline over here. As you can see, it's a really light grayish line all around, and that's just an extra piece of paper left on every pattern so you can place one on top of the other. So what I'm going to do is trim off the corners, as I said, like this. Making sure to cut exactly where the corner of this margin meets like the scissor. And I'm going to do that for all papers, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've trimmed off every corner on all of the pattern papers, and now we just start assembling. I'm going to be using tape, but you could use whatever you'd like. You could also use glue. And here's where this comes in. We're going to assemble from 1 to 5, from 6 to 10, to 11 to 15, and from 18 to 20. As you can see, 16 and 17 doesn't have any pattern pieces on them, so that means that wasn't printed out. But this also has these numbers over here, so you know what goes with what. So this is page 1. It says to match with 2, which is this one, and this one says to match with 1. So this also have these guides to help you out. And now you just match the corners on the top and on the bottom, like this. Okay, so I have my first and second row assembled completely, and I'm going to show you how you're going to assemble these two, but you're also going to repeat that to assemble the rest of the rows. So it's the same as we did assembling this. We're going to place one on top of the other and match the corners as perfectly as we can. And use our tape again. And now I just have to assemble the rest of the rows, and I'll be right back. Okay, so my pattern is fully assembled. I'm going to try and show you how it looks since it's a little bit big to show on camera. But here's my front panel, my back, and the sleeve. So now I just have to cut around everything, and I'll have 3 pattern pieces. Okay, so I have my 3 pattern pieces. This is my sleeve, which I thought looked really short at first, but it's perfect. Look. This is my back panel, which I'm probably going to cut unfold, and my front panel. I love the shape of the neckline. Here I have a dart to shape the bust, and for the front I have a 1 centimeter seam allowance, but I'm going to be making a button placket, so I'll probably just cut that off and add the centimeters that I need for the button placket. You could also trim this off, cut it unfold, and add an invisible zipper on the back. My plan is to add a button placket, so we're not adding zippers or anything like that. And here's my fabric. So I'm just going to cut everything and get started with sewing. Okay, so quick little update. I'm about to start sewing, and I wanted to show you what I'm planning to do, or basically like the general steps that I'm going to follow to sew this dress. First thing, I'm going to close the darts on the front panels, just so that I can sew the sides, the shoulder seams, and everything with the back. And I also cut some facings for the front and back. I'm just going to sew that on the shoulders, just so I can have it ready to attach later on. And I'm also going to serge, or in my case, zigzag stitch, the outer edge, just so the fabric doesn't fray. And I'm not doing anything with the sleeves nor the back panel until I have my front panel ready. Okay, so I hope this makes sense, but basically I'm going to be attaching the facing on the entire neckline, front and back, and I'm also going to be attaching the sleeves. I love attaching sleeves this way. I don't usually do it. The difference is that I haven't closed the sides. You know, they usually just close the sides and then attach the sleeves to the fully closed armhole. We are just attaching the sleeves to the armhole and then closing all the sides together. So we'll be sewing the side of the dress and the sleeves at the same time. I'll show you how, but it's a pretty good tip.
Golden sunlight. If I'm going with you, I know we'll get to the other side.
Okay, so I quickly put the dress on my tailor's dummy so you get a better idea on what I'm sewing and what step I'm in case you want to recreate this dress. The last thing I did was to attach the sleeves, but as I mentioned, I have not closed the sides. We're going to be closing them all together, like the sides of the sleeve and the dress at the same time. And I have the facing pinned to the entire neckline. What I'm going to do is sew from here all the way around to the other side until I get to this side. This has the extra 5 centimeters, which I left for the bottom closure, but I'll work on the bottom closure later on. So yeah, I'm just going to sew this and flip it inside out and press so it looks really nice. And then I can go ahead and close the sides, making sure I match the notches and to zigzag stitch or overcast the raw edges.
Sinking in, I know this feels right. Catching a breeze, love moving through me like a wildfire, like a wildfire.
Let me show you how the neckline turned out. Something really important right now is that we have to clip the round edges of the seam so that when I flip it around, it looks so much better. So what I like to do is just cut some notches like this. And I also trim the corners like this. Just make sure that you never cut the thread of the actual seam. On here too. And now it's going to look so much better when I flip it around. But before I do that, I'm going to close the sides. Okay, so right now I'm on the center front and I'm going to show you how I'm planning on closing the button placket. The first thing I'm going to do is to open this up. As you can see, this is the facing. I'm opening it up towards the top and I'm going to measure 1 centimeter and press. So just make sure that you're using 1 centimeter all around. It doesn't have to be perfect, but more or less 1 centimeter. You're going to do that all the way to the hem of the dress, like that. Now, after that, you're going to lower this. You know, we have the 1 centimeter here, folded. We're going to lower it. And then we're going to measure 2 centimeters and fold. It should look something like this over here. And now, from the wrong side of the dress, we're going to sew as close as we can as the folded edge all the way to the top, and we'll have our button placket. This is how it looks from the front. Remember to do this for both sides. Here is how it's looking already. I'm extremely excited. It's looking just how I want it to. I think it looks really elegant. I finished the button plackets. The right side will overlap the left side, which means that the buttons go on this side and the buttonholes go on this one. For attaching any buttonholes or buttons, we have to hem the dress because we have to know how long we want it to, and so we can attach buttons accordingly. I've already pinned over here where I want my dress to sit. I tried it on myself and calculated where I want it to sit on my legs, so I recommend you guys do the same. So I'm going to cut it all around, hem it, and I'm also going to hem the sleeves. After that, we only have to attach the buttons and we'll be done with the dress, but we still have to make the belt, which is going to give that final touch to this dress. So yeah, let's do that. I want my dress to finish here, which means I have to leave the extra fabric for the hem, and I think I'm going to leave about 3 centimeters below the pin. Here I'm matching both sides, and I'm going to mark all around 5.5 centimeters from the bottom.
Bring me into golden sunlight.
Okay, so now it's time to make the belt that I'm going to be tying on the waist. It's super simple. Honestly, you could do a shape other than a rectangle for like the ends, but I'm just going to leave it as a rectangle. I had this left over. This is literally everything I had left over from the fabric for the dress, so I'm just going to be using this. I could be doubling it in length, but I think it's just enough, and I really like the thicker look of like the belt. So what I'm going to do is just close the entire rectangle, folding it in half and closing. Obviously, I do have to leave like a small opening just to flip it inside out, and then I can sew it closed. So I'm just sewing all closed, leaving a small opening like on the center, and then I can flip it inside out.
And I will get to the other side. Sinking in, I know this feels right. Catching a breeze, love moving through me like a wildfire.
Okay, so now the last step is to attach the buttons. So I'm going to be using these ones. I think that looks good. So it would be 8 buttons, one starting over at the top and one about 10 centimeters from the hem. So let's mark down the buttonholes. I have already made a test one over here. So it's about almost 2 centimeters long, and I'm going to mark those over here. I'm just going to make 7 buttonholes, not 8. Okay, so they're marked down already, so I can head to my machine and start making the buttonholes.
Like a wildfire.
Now I just have to open up the buttonholes like this, and what I like to do is to kind of start the opening with a seam ripper, really carefully, just a little bit, and then I grab my scissors and finishing open. I like this method because it doesn't stretch out the fabric. Now that I've opened up all of the buttonholes, I'm going to place it on top of my other bottom placket. Make sure it's carefully aligned. And I'm going to start marking where I want the buttonholes to go.
Never the same. Never you calling my name. I'm taking my sweet time.
Okay, so I'm finally done with the dress, and I can honestly say I could not be happier with the results. I think it turned out even better than I had in my head. Just look how beautiful it looks, and especially with the print of this fabric, I love it. I really love the small buttons for this dress. This notch neckline is really pretty as well, and the sleeves, I never wear sleeves this length, but something about it with this particular print makes it look so elegant. I really like it. Remember, the dress has some darts on the bust. It's so comfy. I think the length was also perfect. Once again, I did not have to modify a single thing for it to fit me like this. I just printed out the pattern and just sewed everything, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance, so I did not take it in or anything, apart from hemming the dress. I also have the belt, so let's tie it. So which is your favorite? I honestly can't decide. I really love it without the belt too, actually. I thought I was going to like it more with the belt, but something about the dress on its own looks really, really good as well. So this is how it looked on the avatar, and this is how it looks on me. What do you guys think? I highly recommend trying out this pattern, especially it's a blouse, but I turned it into a dress, so you can modify it according to your inspiration or ideas that you have that you want to sew. And even though it's not all colorful like all summer clothes are, I think it's really great for summer and with my favorite color palette to wear as well.